James, do you want to
Mhm.
talk about Criminal Minds
Oh my
on podcast
god.
Wheels Up?
Oh my god, I forgot we were doing a podcast for Wheels Up of Criminal Minds. We are indeed. We are talking about season 1, episode 15, Unfinished Business.
A better episode than I think either of us thought it would be.
Will I ever choose to rewatch it again? No. Was it pretty good? Yeah.
Yeah, it was like pretty good.
Wheels operating normally. I'd give
I'm
it.
a pretty Wheels neutral on
Yeah.
this one.
I'll give it
But
a no real
I go
problems.
Wheels Up. I go Wheels Up on this one because I do really like that it's like a Gideon mirror episode.
Sure.
I'll explain what I mean by that when we get into it, but like I really like that it is a mirror episode so early on into this character journey.
Yeah. And I liked it. I'm going to save, those pictures I shared with you. I'll save talking about it for the end. But there are a lot of little touches in this show that I really did enjoy that just kind of like kicked it up a notch for me.
Yeah, it's like actually really.
We're being so vague. We're just like praising the show without actually talking about anything that happens in it.
Let's just get into it
Yeah.
because I think this episode does a lot of interesting things, and I think it's best if we talk about it within the context of this episode and not just be vague. So,
Yeah.
lead us in, James.
Wonderful. We are in Washington, D.C. We are at the J. Miller bookstore, which does not exist, looking at a slideshow of women. Dead women, I should be specific. They are dead.
So rarely on this show are we looking at a slideshow of live women, so...
Yeah. Oh my god, can I tell you something? I recently found a website that ran from like 2005 to 2016 called like Criminal Minds Fanatics. And I have been going backwards in time through this blog. I think I'm on like I'm in 2007 right now. But I found some wonderful pictures. But also like I learned a couple cute tidbits from the pictures. So like the wall in the BAU that has like the pictures of like the dead policemen and stuff.
Yeah.
Those are all like the crew members. They all got to take
really?
because like I found on the website pictures of the crew members like posing beside the pictures of themselves on the wall.
Oh, that's a neat like behind the scenes tip.
Yeah,
I like that.
I think we talked about it when I listened to the audio commentary for Derailed that like a lot of the pictures of unsubs and stuff are crew members and crew members' family, or like, hey, you want to come in and play like a dead person? Yeah, but it didn't occur to me that like random pictures of FBI people would also just be like the crew.
Yeah, literally
like
just
that.
the costume department that day. Yeah, literally. I love that.
Love it. Yeah. Anyway, I bring it up because I was like looking at those pictures of women and I was like, oh, that's deaf, like, people's girlfriends and stuff. Yeah. So Max Ryan is giving a presentation on the Keystone Killer. If you don't know, Pennsylvania is the Keystone State. Right away, we know where we're going with it. I know that because Alison Bechtel is from Pennsylvania.
I didn't know that at all, so I just learned something right off the bat.
You didn't know that? Oh my
God. I don't know. Why is it called
what
the
kind
Keystone
of lesbian
State?
are you?
Well, no, I know who Alison Bechtel is. I don't know that Pennsylvania is called the Keystone State. Do I look like a motherfucker who gives a shit about geography?
I don't either. One of the songs from the musical, she just talks about it. She's like, and this is a keystone because Pennsylvania is the Keystone State. I don't know. Rocks are neat.
Rocks are neat.
Anyway.
Let's talk about Criminal Minds.
Yeah. So Max Ryan has written a book called Houses of Horror, The Hunt for the Keystone Killer. He was active 18 years ago. He killed, I think, 7 women. And he communicated in like a letter matrix, kind of like a crossword puzzle. And he would like taunt the police. He fueled the media's fascination with himself, and like they always knew the letters were legit because the puzzle they got would have clues from the previous crime scene and the next crime scene. So yeah, he was kind of like he just like taunted them forever. When he stopped killing 18 years ago, the Philly PD thought that he was in jail for another crime or that he'd moved away. But Max Ryan, who I'm from now on going to call Ryan, was like, no, because VICAP would have caught him. Um, because VICAP's like the system for serial killers or whatever. Except I'm pretty sure it's like still new in 2005.
Yeah,
So like,
I think they make a whole deal. The VICAP, by the way, is the Violent Criminal Apprehension Program, VICAP. And it was, I think it was only made in 19 it was only made in like 1985, but it wasn't like it didn't become a good thing. It wasn't like good or inclusive until like 2008.
I was gonna say because in the show in the early seasons, like they go to interview people for VICAP like several times. Like in Derailed, that's what Elle's off to do.
Mhm.
In the last episode, Ride the Lightning, they were going to interview like a serial killer couple because there weren't any in VICAP, you know. So I don't know why he's so sure that VICAP would have caught them. But anyway,
I think it makes perfect sense for this weird FBI career guy to put all of his faith in a system that's still sort of a little broken at that point. You
it's
know?
just like a
That
big
tracks for
Excel
me.
document,
Yeah,
you
literally. At
know?
that point, it's just an Excel
Yeah.
spreadsheet that somebody's really meticulous about.
Yeah. Um, and it's just like a yearbook. Okay, and then the other theory is that the Keystone Killer died. And Max Ryan is all like, no, I would know if he had died. Real creepy like.
He immediately, from the first scene you see him in, he is the
Suspicious.
worst. The
The
worst, I
worst.
think. It's a good way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah. I confused this episode for an episode of Rizzoli and Isles because I 100% thought he was the
The
one doing the
Keystone Killer.
killing. Not that he had been originally, but that like he was doing it now. Because there's an episode of Rizzoli Isles where someone starts killing just like an old case, and like the guy, someone got put away in prison for it, but the lead detective like never thought it was him. So the lead detective starts killing in that manner so that he can draw out the real killer, and it works. But he did also become a murderer. So I thought that this was going to be like Ryan
Oh.
so obsessed with the Keystone Killer that he's like, I'm gonna like I know everything about him. I know him better than he knows himself. I'm gonna become him, and then I'll figure out like who it is. Like I thought it was gonna be some sort of like obsession gone too far. But no, he just turns out to have been right the whole time, which is kind of boring. But okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was like they really try and like teach him a lesson in this episode, but it doesn't work because he was kind of right the whole time. So like why would he be like, damn, but I was mean about it though?
It's Here's the thing about this episode. They
Mm.
set it up very early on as what I call like a mirror episode, which is where one of the main characters gets an uncomfortable mirror held up to themselves, basically. So in this case, Ryan is very much like the mirror to Gideon. And I think it's very interesting to see where Ryan is currently to where Gideon started off. Because if you remember in the very beginning, he had all these troubles working with the team as well. So I think it's interesting to play them off of each other in this way. And they were both right the whole time.
I will also say though that I think he's a mirror for Elle as well. You know, like kind of like a
Yeah.
future. This is what you could become, dun 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 kind of thing. You know, because Elle goes through that kind of journey in this episode of being like, "Fuck, I don't want to be like that guy."
Yeah.
Um,
I think they make Elle worry about her future more than any other BAU agent.
Elle had the
Nobody
chance
else is
of being a
concerned
normal
about it.
person,
Yeah.
and then they destroyed her.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think she worries about the future more than any BAU agent, to be perfectly honest with you.
yeah. Okay, so we see Gideon watching the lecture. We learned that the Keystone Killer had this like intricate knot signature. Like he would tie their hands with this like really intense knot, and it was like purely for decoration and purely for like the satisfaction of having done it. He like didn't need it to subdue his victims, but it made him
Hmm.
feel powerful. I guess that he had the time to sit there and do this crazy knot.
Hmm.
Yeah, so, and Max Ryan, we learned so much about this dude immediately. Max Ryan says that everyone thinks he's a compulsive psychopath and that he's killing because he has to. And Ryan is like, no, I think he's a narcissistic sociopath who chooses to kill.
Mm-hmm.
I I don't think so that he chooses to kill, because the whole thing of why he started killing again was that he had a list of women he
Yeah.
wanted to kill, and now he was physically able to, he was going to go back and do it. Like, I don't didn't feel like a choice. It felt like he was like, there are unwritten chapters, I have unfinished business, etc. I have to go finish it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think they do anything to back up that phrase that Ryan says
Yeah.
at all
Narcissistic
during this episode.
sociopath. To me,
He
that
also doesn't
sounds.
seem very narcissistic when we meet him. He's just like a guy.
He's definitely like a bad dude,
He's definitely not a good person.
but he's not like, and I got away with it for 25 years, I don't know. It's,
He's not a Scooby Doo villain who would have gotten away with it if it weren't for those meddling kids.
yeah,
He is fully just a bad person who murdered people.
yeah.
But also, I don't know if he screamed like narcissist to me.
I don't think he did. Anyway, we find out that Ryan's a retired BAU member who's still chasing the one that got away. And Gideon's like, hey, Ryan, you might be wrong. And Ryan's like, I'm not wrong. And guess what? He isn't. Uh, a
Which is
security off.
unfortunate because God, I wanted to see this man be wrong so fucking bad. I wanted
Yeah,
to see this dude get his shit rocked so bad.
yeah. Like, I wanted him to
Ma-
either be like super fucking wrong or be the villain, and instead he just got to do what every other like upper middle aged white dude with money gets to do. He's just like, oh yeah, I was right. Everything is fine. Now I'll be nice to you. I'm satisfied.
Maybe I just don't like the Gideon archetype of like, I'm right, but I will be mean about it.
Who likes that archetype? Don't you
I don't know.
hate Jason Gideon?
Yeah, I hate Jason Gideon.
So why
I
would
don't
you?
like
Why
this
would
dude.
you? Why would you
I
like?
don't I don't know, like I was like maybe the reason I don't like this dude is because he so closely mirrors Gideon and everything Gideon stands for.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why. I just had that moment of revelation within myself.
Wow. I feel
Maybe I
like
don't like people who are correct but mean about it, you know?
the difference between them, and I don't know if I can't qualify it and say if it's good or bad, but I think the difference is that Gideon like knows he's part of a team. He's just very confident that he is the leader of that team.
But
You
also I think
know?
in the first few episodes Gideon was not
No.
like he wasn't like I'm a member of a team. He was like I'm Jason Gideon. I'm right. Let's go. You know?
And they do have, Rossi does that exact same thing.
Yep.
They
All
like,
of their old guys do the same thing.
yeah, they really were like men of a certain. Can you imagine the vibe in the office when it was like Rossi, Gideon, Max Ryan? Just like, did they all just sit in silence and then one of them would just get up and leave and catch the guy? Like, what was that team dynamic?
Well, I think they kind of alluded to it of like they didn't work as a team. They worked separately. Like
Right.
Ryan even talks about it. He's like, we did the solo back in the day, and he's like, yeah, and Gideon is like, yeah, and we were wrong sometimes.
Yeah.
So
It
I
was
think it
interesting.
wasn't as much of a team dynamic as in like these people are under the same umbrella for HR to qualify them. You know, like I
They
don't
work in
think
the
it was
same
like
office,
yeah,
but they don't work
exactly,
together. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
They share an office space, and that's about it.
Yeah. A tiny office space. Okay. A security guard brings a letter, and Mark Ryan is like, ha ha ha, fan mail. And it kind of is. It's a new puzzle from the Keystone Killer.
Dun dun dun.
And Mark Ryan is like, where is he? Who got this to you? And they're like, oh, it was a guy in a blue jacket. And he like grabs the like just the man next to him who's wearing a blue jacket. And the security guard is like, dude, what the fuck? It's not him. Yeah. And so in the note it says that he's gonna start again. There's like the last chapters aren't written. I need to finish the story. Um, here are 2 IDs of the women killed.
So yeah, so it's the ID of the last woman who was killed in the 80s or whatever,
Yeah.
Amy Jennings, and then it is a new ID for a new woman.
Yeah, Carla Bromwell. Which, I'm so sorry, Carla Bromwell. What a name.
What a name.
Yeah. Okay. Cut to the BAU. Elle, Derek, Reed, and Hotch are coming in. It's Saturday night. Elle and Derek are like, what the fuck? You expect us to just like drop everything on a Saturday night? And Reed's like, I'm excited. Mark Ryan did this job. Did everyone know that? He did this job.
And like he caught the Boise child killer or whatever.
Okay. This made me laugh when they said that. Because remember in Derailed, Elle is gonna go interview the child killer, the child
Oh my
murderer.
god.
I
Were they
was like,
just like
yeah. I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Is this the same child murderer? Or is there like the child murderer and then like under him it's like the Boise child killer? The you know? Elle is like, what is he like? And Hotch says, pretty intense, brusque, not much of a bedside manner. And Elle says, who does that sound like? You know, it's so funny that you say he's a mirror for Gideon because I totally read that line as him being a mirror for like Hotch. Like it really felt like Max Ryan was kind of like an amalgamation of all of the worst qualities of the BAU. You know, like he
but
had
I think
Elle's snappishness, he was away from his family, the way that like
Mhm.
Gideon and Hotch were. He
Mhm.
was like doubting everyone like Derek does. He's nothing like Spencer Reed because Spencer's a baby in season 1 and he's perfect in season 1. You ever see a
He's
kid
perfect
and you're
before the
like,
writers ruin him.
you ever see a kid and you're like, please stay this young forever? That's me with Spencer Reed in season 1. He is a beautiful, perfect baby in season 1.
I don't know, like I think what stands out to me maybe is the way that cuz like Hotch, I don't know, Hotch is also like secretly a smiley good guy with a good bedside manner if he needs to be, you know?
Fluffy haired boy.
He's a floppy haired boy in season 1. Like
Yeah.
with his ill-fitting suits. I don't know, he doesn't read to me as much of a mirror for Elle or
Yeah.
Aaron as he does for Gideon because the Gideonness is just
Yeah.
very overwhelming to
But
me.
I think I do think you're right that he is supposed to be like look how much he's like Gideon, like look at these men of a certain age. But I do think that he's kind of like represents the end they're all heading toward because
Yeah.
when they mention like, oh, Al goes, I thought he was retired, some retirement, and Derek's like,
Yeah.
yeah, he retired BAU style. They look at the new puzzle and there's a quote on it that I didn't write down, but it's a quote by John Steinbeck from his novel East of Eden, and I looked it up, and East of Eden is basically like a parallel to the story of Cain and Abel, which makes sense for like Keystone Killer and Max Ryan, similar,
Yeah.
but yeah. And then I found a quote that John Steinbeck said about his book East of Eden. He said, I think everything else I have written has been, in a sense, practice for this, which was his quote about East of
Ah.
Eden. So I thought it was interesting that they chose a book that like was this man's magnum opus that he considered his like best work, you know.
Yeah. That's
And
interesting.
yeah, and like this is like the guy's like I'm coming back to finish my killing. Everything else was practice for this. So
Mhm.
I thought that was really interesting. Um, yeah.
I love your little fun facts.
Oh, thank you so much. I have a few in here. Um, so then Derek was like, "Wait, he was like in your lecture and you let him get away." And Max Ryan goes, "Would we have woken you up if we had found him?" And Derek's like, "Damn." And part of me was like, "Don't be rude to Derek," and then part of me was like, "Thank you." Like, this is Derek yet again being like, "Sorry, why am I here?" And someone's finally like, "Because it's your fucking job, Derek Morgan." Like, I was just like, "Thank you." Um, But also, I was like, how dare you talk to my man, Derek Morgan, like that? Only I'm allowed to judge Derek Morgan. Yeah. Um. Okay. So they're talking about how Amy Jennings was his last victim, and Mark Ryan says his last known victim. Bum bum bum. He might have been killing this whole time. But then, like when he said that, I was like, "Bro, you just said he hasn't been killing, or Vicap would have caught it, and now you're like, but maybe he was though."
Well, I pictured that more as like the last known victim, and then he had that other driver's license. So he was like, there's probably another victim.
Well, they had already found her by then, so it's like
Damn.
we
Yeah, no,
do.
maybe what was up
Yeah.
with that guy?
Hey, Criminal Minds writers, get it together.
What's up with that
Uh,
guy that you made?
yeah. What's up with that bad boy you made?
Hey guys, you know the boy creation process? You've done it bad here, and I want to just know what's up.
Reed has a word search montage. He's
I
like,
love his word search montages this
oh,
episode.
he like looks at this paper and the letters are swimming and they're flashing. I remembered this when it started because I was like, okay, but like 20 words flash at you. How did you decide these were the important ones? It's just Reed being big brain.
He's just such a big brain boy.
He finds the word black bra and gray wool socks, which is what Amy Jennings, the last victim, was wearing when she was found. And then he also finds the words no fight and rear window, which come to mean nothing.
Well, no, that one's more about the other case, right? Because like no fight means that he hit her on the fucking head and she was just conked.
Yeah,
She was putting up no fight after that point.
yeah, but like the rear window didn't make any sense.
Yeah, that came to nothing except an excuse for Ryan to be mean to Elle.
I wonder though, there's so many references to movies in this episode. I wonder if it was rear window like
The Alfred
I
Hitchcock film.
because the killer was injured and then he started taking pictures, which is what happens in Rear Window, right? He like gets in an accident, he can't use his legs, so he starts taking pictures of his neighbors. He sees a murder through the window and basically has to like solve or stop a
The
murder.
murder.
Yeah. So I like wonder if like the reference of Rear Window was not I came in through the back window of her house and more I was injured for a very long time and now I'm a photographer, but in a crime way. Like I wonder if like because East of Eden was a 1952 book turned into a movie,
Mm-hmm.
and Rear Window is old.
It is for those who don't know, it's a 1950s mystery thriller directed by Alfred Hitchcock.
Yeah, you gotta watch it though for real. It's so good.
It is. It's a very
Um,
good movie.
and once you watch it, you'll see how many shows have Rear Window episodes. Like
Yeah.
so many shows will do like a Rear Window episode, which I love it. And they also he quotes Sir Francis Bacon at one point, and then Gideon quotes His Girl Friday. It was just like, why are we having this? I guess because it's an episode about like old men, so they keep quoting these like old
Old
ass
movie.
movies. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, so I think Rear Window they misinterpreted it. I think it was a movie reference. Um, they're talking about the IDs. One of the IDs is the last victim. One of it's a new victim. But then the new victim was suffocated, not strangled, which really throws them off. Because it's a new MO. And
And that weird knot is nowhere to be found.
yeah, he used flexicuffs. Um, and then Max Ryan has this weird moment where he was like, I would know if the Keystone Killer was active again. I would know. And I was like, okay, Spidey senses. Like, Max Ryan is really like, I would know if he was dead. I would know if he was active. Me, him, same brain. So weird. And then JJ enters and says, I'd say good morning, but it's still dark outside.
Comedy genius.
Jennifer
Comedy
Girl.
genius.
Yeah. And also, we see our first instance of the classic Criminal Minds. Everyone is holding an empty cup.
Can I tell you?
The whole show.
Can I tell you one of my biggest pet peeves?
Yeah.
is when they put a cup down and it rings out like it's empty. Like they
Yes.
couldn't even be bothered to put water in it.
Yes.
It grinds my fucking gears so goddamn much.
There's an episode later on where like JJ and Emily have like stopped by like not Starbucks and they got Penelope like a coffee and they go to hand it to her and it's so clearly an empty paper cup. Criminal Minds
It's
just
just like
refuses. They're like, no liquid on set.
like I understand to an extent, but also
But also,
what the fuck?
what the fuck?
Why
Yeah.
the fuck would you not just put water in it? It
Yeah.
sounds bad when it gets put down on a table. There is one of my least favorite scenes in Person of Interest, the
Yes.
whole series, is every single time Joss is in an interrogation room with the suspect and she's like, "Let me get you some water," and then puts down a very obviously empty cup and it rings out like it's empty. I'm like, how I can suspend my disbelief for the all-seeing government eye monitoring machine, but I refuse to budge on a cup. I
It's
refuse.
the details. It's the details.
It bothers me so much.
It
I don't
bothers
know
me
if
so
you
much.
understand how much it truly does bother me.
And it bothers me so much in Criminal Minds because none of those actors know how to fake like there's weight in a cup. Like JJ
Yeah.
walks in like I got a cup of coffee and she's fucking like shaking it like a maraca, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway, she brings in a picture of the victim and is like, turn on the news. And they do. And the news guy conveniently is like, this morning we got a letter from the Keystone Killer and a picture of the victim. It does look like they're dead. And then Hotch says, meet you on the plane in 30 minutes.
We were so close.
Yeah.
We were so close.
Yeah. I swear to God, I will cry real tears the first time they say Wheels Up.
It's just like
I mean, we're fucking 15 episodes in. Say it. Like, the funniest thing about it, though, is, like, if you worked with someone for 15 years and it, like, became a thing where you said Wheels Up all the time, that's funny. But it should
that's
not have,
hysterical.
but it should not have been, like, the only thing. Like, it
They
should
should
be
have
one
had
of,
so many more inside jokes, and I will
Yeah.
die on this hill.
like, anytime one of them, like, was like, well, I can't have any more coffee. Someone is like, uh-oh, they're devolving. You know, like, just any, like, come on, you've been best friends for 15 fucking years. You're telling me your only inside joke is a wildly sincere, come on, Wheels Up. Come on, get it together.
It's just so
Okay, but I do have 6 more pages of notes, so let's keep going.
Let's go.
Okay. Max Ryan is like, I will be coming along on the plane. And at this point, everyone's already like looking at each other like, I do not want this man on my airplane. Yeah. So I think this is the first time we see Penelope on screen on the laptop in the plane. Is that
I think
correct?
it is.
I think it
This
is.
is also this feels like a turning point for Derek and
Penelope.
Penelope's like
Yeah.
sweetheart, sugar, baby relationship.
Yeah, they
you know?
call each other that. Like, it's not like so. Like, they set it off super like Rainmaker. How wet do you want it? And they've cut it back to just calling each other like sweetheart and sugar, and then they like find the middle ground of like, you know, thunder abs, like, you know.
I love that this really shows neither of us know how to compliment men. Neither of us are like, oh yeah, thunder abs?
Some of them are gross and weird,
Yeah.
you know. I don't know. They're not there yet, though.
They're not there yet, but I like this.
Yeah.
This episode feels very fun and nice. for them.
Yeah, they're like, thanks, sweetheart. Like, oh, of course, sugar, I got you. Like, they're very like casually flirty, you know.
And then even like Gideon is like, hey, call her girl Friday. Like, everybody's gets in on it now, which I
Yeah.
like.
Although I'm pretty sure that is about JJ, and I'll tell you why in a minute. Anyway, here the woman's hands and feet are bound by flexi cups. Flexi cups. What the fuck? Flex cuffs. My God, my fucking brain. Derek Morgan is like, maybe there's a copycat, and Max Ryan is like, no, it's not. And everyone's just kind of like, okay. And then Max Ryan walks away, and Gideon's like, don't worry, like, he's consulting. He's not, like, working on the case. He's just consulting. And Derek's like, does he know that? Or, looking at the body, there's no bruising. There's only the blunt force head wound. And Elle's like, well, that note did say rear window. Like, I'm going to go dust the rear window for prints. And Max Ryan is like, don't fucking bother. There won't be anything. And Elle's like, okay, fuck you. I'm going to go do it.
This is why I'm like, oh, he's a Gideon.
Yeah.
Because, like, I'm pretty sure Gideon did that exact same thing at some point earlier.
Like to Garcia,
like, Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm just like,
yeah, I really got that vibe when Gideon is like, Elle knows what she's doing, and Max Ryan is like, I didn't say she didn't. And it felt very much like when Gideon was like, what, the girl with the screens? Oh yeah, she's great.
The girl with all the screens? She's perfect.
After being like so shitty, like it was like literally that same thing.
I hate old men so goddamn much.
Yeah.
Sir.
Have some fucking respect.
God, I hate old men so much.
Yeah. And then I wrote, he's clearly taking it personally. The case. So then we got to JJ. Okay, we need to talk about JJ in this episode.
She's
not just for gay reasons. Not for gay reasons, but for they handled her. So AJ Cook was sick in this episode. During her press conference, like later, you can hear it in her voice. She's so sick. But she couldn't take the time off from the episode.
Yeah.
So she's in it. But she walks in the first scene. She is not on the airplane when they're all talking. And then I was like, oh, I guess she didn't come along. But then she is just there at a press conference. And then she completely disappears. And then she's back at the next press conference. Again, gone on the plane on the way home. And I just was like, you guys need to get better at like all you have to do is like stick a blonde in her outfit and put her in the background. And I'll be satisfied that JJ's there. It is the fully just like, where did she go? Where'd she go? How'd she get here? Like,
they have body doubles for all of them that could have been there.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, sometimes you have to remember that a TV show is just somebody's day job, and sometimes they get sick. So shit gets moved around, and it doesn't always make sense.
She sounds so bad in that second press
conference. It really sounded painful, actually.
She looks very cute in that pink turtleneck. JJ outfit check. She looks great this whole episode. But she's sounding sick as hell. And it's the scenes she's not in are the scenes at the police station. So I think whatever like day or two they were filming at that police station, she just like wasn't there. But this is like not the first time this has happened with JJ specifically. I think that at this point the show still doesn't really like count her as part of the team. So like she doesn't need to be there when they're talking about cases, and they don't even use her as like audience insert. Like in this episode specifically, like Max Ryan has all the information about the killer, and then the team has all the information about the BAU, so they can just kind of like use each other to answer and ask questions.
Yeah, at this point in the show, AJ Cook wasn't that high up on the call sheet. She wasn't that high up, which is a travesty.
Incorrect.
A travesty. but I can see why, because it is such a, like, what other propaganda show has a press liaison, right? I can see why they struggled with where to place her within the episodes and how to utilize her correctly, Like, no other propaganda show has this.
Yeah,
which is such an interesting role.
Yeah. They do find their stride with her come North Mammon in season 2. That's when they finally are like, maybe we should like give JJ a personality besides like annoyed. But man, these early seasons, they were really just like, okay, someone go give the press conference. Okay, you can go home now. Like, okay. JJ's giving a press conference. She's basically like, we can't tell you anything. Where this is an ongoing investigation, and all the reporters are like, we've got more information from the killers than the police. And JJ is so pissed. She's like, oh, okay, bye. Like, just like leaves. Um,
I do think it's very girl boss of her to just walk away.
oh, yeah.
I love it.
She's
I love
like,
it.
you got your soundbite. I'm leaving. Bye. Yeah.
Literally.
Okay. Um, Reed and Hotch are also at the house. They're going through Carla Bromwell's office, and Reed is like, "Oh my god, I can't wait to learn from him." And Hotch is like, "What could you possibly have to learn?" And Reed is like, "Homogenous thinking is the death of the mind. You know, we need diversity and diverse opinions." Except, like, Reed never has a conversation with Max Ryan. They're looking at her office, and they find a new puzzle there, and they're wearing gloves. Wait, I
They
wrote
are
that
wearing
down.
gloves.
It's important because they will not be wearing gloves later. All right. The new quote is Sir Francis Bacon. I didn't write it down.
It was one that Jack, or God, I keep wanting to call him Jack Ryan because that's
Max Ryan.
Max Ryan. Max Ryan used that same Sir Francis Bacon quote in
Right. His
his
book.
book.
Yeah.
So he's like, he read my book. Like, very angry
Yeah.
about this. Like, you never expected the person who your book is about to read it.
Wasn't that like the whole
Sure.
fucking point?
Yeah, literally.
And so he's like, okay, the gifts are for me. The victims are gifts and they're for me. Then we see the dark room, and we see that this man has clearly been like stalking women, and he's like scrapbooking, and we see like who his next woman is gonna be. Boom, boom, boom. Then we cuts to the office, the station, and they're like, I couldn't tell if they were like giving the profile or just like talking. Like they give it later, but I think at the beginning they're just kind of like talking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they're saying that like the victims are older, like the Keystone Killer got older, so did his victims. Um, and that's weird because these kinds of killers have a fantasy, like, and that fantasy like wouldn't age with the killer.
Yeah, so victimology rarely changes with killers because they are trying to fulfill a very specific niche fantasy, and that
Mm-hmm.
fantasy, it's like they're killing the same person over and over again, which is what
Yeah,
they make allusions to here.
yeah. They talk about Ted Bundy. He killed women who look like his fiance. Um, yeah.
And
Also,
then devolved into killing.
no, no, they don't say devolving. They say de-evolving.
What?
They call it his devolution. He's de-evolving.
Why don't they just say devolving? Isn't that the right term?
Mm-hmm. But I literally like Gideon was like, he's gonna go into a frenzy and begin to de-evolve, and I was like, de-evolve.
I have to wonder if
I was
that
like, I
makes me
get.
wonder if that's just like their their uh their script writing software just they didn't run the spell check on it first, you
And
know?
it like auto corrected dashes in there.
Yeah. And so they were like, "Oh, you're trying to say evolve, right? With the D in front of it? Cool." It's like,
But
"Wait, no.
it is devolve. But
Devolve is the correct word, yes."
yeah, but I think what like they're trying to be specifically in saying that somebody can evolve as a killer to a certain point, and then they begin to de-evolve. But at that point, I feel like use the word regress. You know, it was just weird. I was like, "What the fuck are you saying?" Yeah, yeah.
It's really weird.
And then Gideon's like, "Hey, Max Ryan, you made the original profile. Why don't you give it?" And he's just like, "No," and walks away. So Hotch is like, "Okay, we think this man's gonna be." He like starts giving the profile.
He's
Um,
trying his best in the
yeah.
worst circumstance imaginable.
Hotch is like, "Dude, what the fuck?" Yeah. So Gideon follows Max Ryan, and Max Ryan is like, I can't help but feel I was asking for it. Like, I wrote that book and he read it. Like, was I trying to like stroke his ego so he'd come out of hiding? Whatever. And Gideon's like, it could just be a coincidence. And Max Ryan is like, we both have been in this field long enough to know like there's no such thing as coincidences. Um, and again, he's right. It's not a coincidence. um, yeah. So then they're talking about the profile, and they're like, "What's new?" The woman was hit in the head. There wasn't a fight, but she was still knocked unconscious. He used cuffs instead of rope, and suffocating is less personal than strangling someone with your hands. And so Derek is like, "Well, look, why don't we just like treat him like a new unsub because everything is different? Let's like look at it as a new unsub." And um Gideon is like, no, because it's not a new unsub. When like if they had listened to Derek,
They would have solved this way quicker.
yeah, like it's literally Derek's advice later that like gets them to him. Because
It's
it,
really weird to me too because in future cases like this, because this happens a few more times, spoiler alert, they do just like throw everything out and they're like, okay, look at it completely new.
yeah,
What
let's
do we
start
know about the
over.
new killings? Yeah. We know that this is a serial offender, but this is the first time he's using this MO. What does this new
Yeah,
MO say about him?
yeah,
They
but
they're like, let's treat it new later. But this time everybody looks at Derek like he has two heads, and it's like, no, he's right.
yeah, I think they also like they're trying to show how the new energy, the new people, the young people are trying to put their own spin on it and use their own perspective on it. And the older people, Max Ryan Gideon, are like, no, this is the way we do it. He's still
Yeah.
the same person. They're like clinging to that, like, no, 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 he's not a new person. He's still the same person. He's just older, because they see themselves as that as well. Whereas Derek is like young and fresh eyed and has different experiences. So he's like, trying to come at it from a different angle, and the older people won't respect his input. And the same with
Yeah,
Elle.
it's very like old guard, new guard. Very
Exactly.
it's
Yes.
very clearly set up like that.
Exactly. Um yes. So then it's just like in Pitch Perfect when
Oh my
Becca
god.
joins the a cappella group, and she's like, what if we sing new songs? And the a cappella group seniors are like, no, these are the songs we've always sang. But then Bella does end up right and they do sing new songs. It's just like that.
Out of all the things I was expecting you to reference there, Pitch Perfect wasn't high up on the list. I'm not gonna lie to you.
It's not my fandom. It's a fandom adjacent. But I know a good coming of age story when I
I
see
know a
one.
good queer bait when I see one, and goddamn, whatever that redhead and Anna Kendrick have, I want that shit so bad.
Brittany Snow.
Yeah.
Mama needs her jiggle juice. Yeah. Reed is going through the puzzle
Mm-hmm.
and he finds a name, and it's S. Harbin. Uh,
Sarbin.
Sharbin.
Sharbin.
Well, it's backwards, right? So it's like he points at Nib Ross and says, I found a name. And Elle goes, a name from what country? Which, okay, Elle, I didn't know you knew every language.
I know, I love casual xenophobia in my propaganda shows.
Like, Nibra could 100% be someone's name.
Yeah. That
Okay,
sounds like a
Elle.
name a white woman gives her child, and then like their siblings have like 7 E's in their name or something like that, you know?
This is little Nibra. We call her Nibby. Reed finds the name Sharbin, which is Scott Harbin. Um,
Which is somebody they talked to previously, or
yeah,
they talked to twice in the original course of the
yeah, he
investigation.
recognizes the name because it's someone that Mark Ryan had talked to. And Mark Ryan's like, no, it's not him. He got 30 years in prison. I interviewed him a bunch. He's like too normal. And Hotch starts doubting him. And then they like Derek like straight up gets up and says, "I'm gonna go look him up." Like,
Which is so fun and passive aggressive of him, and
yeah,
I love that.
I love it because it's like Al earlier is like, "I'm gonna look up for Prince on the window," and he's like, "No," and she's like, "I'm gonna go look for Prince at the window," and like leaves. And now Derek is like, "I should look him up," and he's like, "No, it's not him." And Derek's like, "I'm going to go look him up," and just like gets up and leaves.
It's just the little things, the little petty acts in this episode that make it really fun.
It's like, as a millennial, it's funny to watch like, Gen X push back at the fucking baby boomers in the same way that I like push back at Gen X.
I just think it's fun to watch grown people being petty to each other. I honestly think
Yeah.
that's very fun.
I don't know how old Derek is in this. I think he's a little older. No, wait, he's 1 year younger than Emily. So he's 20, or sorry, he's
Late 20s in this?
no, he's like 33 in this.
Okay.
Because in season 2, Emily's 35. So yeah, so he's 33.
Okay.
Um, so he's still young. Hotch is starting to doubt Max Ryan,
As he should.
as he should, as they all should. Hotch,
Because
Hotch gives a lot of like judgy side eye in this episode.
he
Like
really does.
he never says anything specific, but he gives a lot of like, "Are you fucking serious, dude?" Like side eye.
And I think that's very fun because I think you can see a lot of like Hotch really believes in the kids, right? He
Yeah,
really believes in Elle and Derek and Spencer, right?
yeah,
And so he just like the way that he is like silently seething whenever Ryan is like, "No, fuck you, you're wrong." He's just like, "Not my
yeah.
kids, not
Because
my fucking kids."
he's not that much older than they are.
Yeah,
Because
he's only like 40 here, right?
no, not even. So in canon, he's a year younger than Emily Prentice, but that is incorrect because he was already working for Emily Prentice's mother when Emily was at Yale.
So he's
So
probably a few years older than Emily, which would put him like mid to late 30s.
yeah, I'd say he's like 38, 39,
Okay.
like old enough to be firmly like an adult. But he's not like in Gideon's camp, and he's not like
Yeah.
he's like old enough to feel protective of the younger ones, but still young enough to push back against Gideon's generation.
Yeah.
I kind of like that. Like I like that Hotch is not like ridiculously older. Like I like that he's kind of like he's young enough to be part of the team, but like still old enough to be respected by whoever the like old person on the team is.
Mhm. Yeah, and I like it because like it plays right now it plays like he is sort of the bridge between the two camps,
Yeah.
and a lot of times he and Spencer kind of end up as like Gideon translators where like
Yeah.
Gideon just says like some bullshit and either it's so obscure only Spencer Reed knows what it is or it's some old case that like
Yeah.
Hotch helped work on sort of thing. So yeah, I do
Yeah.
like how he is young enough to be like fuck you. This is how it's done now, but
Yeah.
also old enough to be like don't insult my kids.
Yeah, I
Don't
really
insult my kids like that.
I really wish we knew how long he'd been at the BAU. It's not that long.
That would mean Max Ryan wouldn't have retired that long ago. If we're trying to fit everything in the timeline here, because he sounds like he's worked with Ryan before.
Well, I think Max Ryan may have retired like 7 or 8 years ago.
So he worked with Max Ryan for like, 2 or 3
Yeah,
years.
they like overlapped a little bit.
But not a whole lot.
Like
Okay.
like he could have been like Hotch could have been someone who joined because they knew Max Ryan was on the way out, you know? Like one of those kinds of things. Because Gideon is unit chief right now. We don't know what
Yes.
Hotch's like job title is, but Gideon is unit chief. And then when Gideon leaves, Hotch becomes unit chief, and Rossi just like joins.
Rossi's just there for
That is
funsies.
so fucking funny. Rossi is like, "Yes, I will be coming back, and yes, I will be getting my own office. Thank you." Like, it's like,
No, I
okay.
will not be taking on any additional responsibility.
No.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I just think it's interesting that Max Ryan is part of that old guard with Gideon, and Hotch is in the middle, and then these kids are kind of testing the boundaries, like
I
what
think they
is.
are.
Yeah, I think it's interesting the kind of like, you know what, I will say Criminal Minds does a really good job, I think, of exploring the difference between like coworkers and friends.
Mm-hmm.
It's like because these people go through so much emotional
Trauma.
tur- turmoil, trauma together, um, they get very close and they see
Mm-hmm.
very difficult parts of themselves, but at the same time, they manage to hide so much of themselves. So Max Ryan, his whole deal, um, kind of hints at something that I have noticed in later seasons, where like when somebody leaves the BAU, it feels like they're dying.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like they are making a choice to say goodbye to these people.
Yeah.
It's never like, I got a better job. Hey guys, I need a mental health break. It's always like, you're abandoning us. And then they're
You're abandoning your
never
family.
mentioned again.
Yeah.
And so for Max Ryan to have retired, we see him retire, and we'll get to this later when Elle and Hutch talk, but for Max Ryan to retire and then continue to do this work, like this really does become their whole lives, and it does become like an aspect of their
Mm-hmm.
personality, and especially the ones who are there for 15 years, JJ, Penelope, Reed, Emily to a lesser extent. She's kind of doing off-screen stuff, but
Most of the time,
most of
yeah.
the time, yeah. But they still imply that the off-screen stuff is profiling. Um, but it really just becomes like who they are, and everything else takes a back seat to it. Derek went to look up Charbin.
Scott Harbin.
I
We
just
can't just
I
call this man Starbin.
listen, every
As
time he's
funny
in
as
my
it would be.
notes, it's Charbin has been paroled for 3 months in Philly, and he missed his last parole check-in. Bum bum bum. That makes him a criminal, apparently.
That means that they can enter his home without a warrant and just go,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. So the FBI SWAT team like breaks into his house. Elle catches him, and Charbin is like joking, laughing, like super chill. He's like, "Oh, does the FBI SWAT team like come after people who broke their parole now?" And I was like, "We were in the neighborhood." Okay.
Which I think is so funny.
Yes. So then they bring up he has a military background, and this is where I wrote no gloves, sad face. Elle is just going around touching things in his hat,
Touching.
like literally just putting her hands on things. His things are very organized, like the certain number of inches apart. Like they look in his underwear drawer, and it's like his socks are like 4 inches apart, and his underwear is like 6 inches. It's like a thing. So they say like, okay, he has like OCD. He's used to like solitude must have been really hard for him. He must have had a strict upbringing, and then he's like mean to Al. Um, Al goes into full "I hate men. I have cut men's dicks off before" mode, and she walks over and she's
So,
like, "Oh, are you scared of a woman who isn't afraid of you?" Mm.
what I thought that this was playing at, and nobody ever confirms it, but what I thought this was playing at is because Elle is a mid-20s brunette who looks like the people that guy killed. I thought
Oh.
she was trying to like elicit a reaction from him of being like of making him be like I kill motherfuckers like you or whatever. But nobody ever treats it like that, and even Gideon is like you kind of roasted his shit. You good? And she's like, "Did I say anything that wasn't true?" I'm like, okay, no, queen, go off, I
I
guess.
wrote, she's babying him. Ick slash hot.
She's just like I that's how I read it of her trying to like elicit a reaction from him, but I don't know if that's necessarily how they wrote it, you know?
She's brunette, but she's not pale like them. She's
That's
also
true.
she's also too young, because his
for
the
him
victims have
now.
aged up, yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't think she like is. I think she just hates men who hurt women.
And honestly, so true,
I
Queen.
mean, so true, Queen.
So true, Queen.
um, so Hotch and Derek are in the bedroom. They open up the dude's armoire, and there's like a film camera and a TV. And they're like, "Where are the tapes?" So they start like looking through bins, and Hotch like knocks on the like board under the bed, and it's hollow. So they move it, they pull it out, and there's a woman wrapped in plastic. She's like bound with ropes, taped on her mouth, freaking out. And they were like, "Well, shit, glad we found her."
Well, shit. Yeah, glad that we managed to. They never elaborate on this at all.
No, he just
After this.
they like make some comment about like they how he worked with the killer installing like house alarms, and they're like, creeps find each other, you know.
So this makes me wonder, is that woman the first one that he's killed in however many years? Does he murder these women? Is he another serial killer as well?
I don't think
Or is he
he's
just a pervert?
I don't think they he was in he was in jail for 30 years, I think, for like rape and aggravated assault.
Do they mention what he went into jail for? Because I can't remember that they mentioned what he went into jail for.
Yeah, they did when Reed finds the name, because Mark Ryan says no, like he got 30 years in prison for something else, and I think they say like what it was, but I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. I didn't write it down because I didn't think it'd be important, and then it was. Um, so Sharman fits the profile. He's in his late 40s. He's white. He um, was in jail for the correct amount of time. You
Yeah,
know,
he just got out 3 months ago, sort of thing. Yeah.
yeah, he was in the military, all that kind of stuff. Unassuming. But then, and then Mark Ryan is like, wow, I guess I was wrong. But then they get a note on the car, and it's from the Keystone Killer. And basically, the Keystone Killer is like, ew, Charbin is inelegant.
He's
Um,
icky.
he's icky, gross. And then I wrote,
Baby girl, he is yucky disgusting.
baby girl, he is
You are
poopy
yucky
caca.
disgusting. Sorry.
You, I'm gonna start calling people that. Girl,
Yucky
you are
disgusting.
yucky disgusting.
I think it's a really funny way to describe serial killers as just yucky disgusting.
I mean, they're so gross, icky. Like, yeah. I wrote, oh, hey, JJ's literally gone again. This is when I was like, hey, wait a minute. Where'd she
Hey,
go?
wait a minute.
Where's my girl? Okay. They're back in the conference room reviewing what they have learned. Clearly, the Keystone Killer likes taunting. He likes being in control. He's not dead and he's not in prison because he's doing things.
He's leaving notes, yeah.
Yeah. Um, and then let's see. Oh yeah, and then Reed says 10% of all violent deaths are strangulation. You only need to put 11 pounds of pressure for 50 seconds to incapacitate someone. Which I was like, 50 seconds is a long time though. For
Yeah, but
strangling.
but it's also not that long when you think about it. That's less than a minute.
But like, how long can a minute feel? A minute of extended exertion against someone fighting back on you.
That's fair.
You know? Anyway, they're like, why the new MO? Like, is he losing confidence? Why would he lose confidence? And then they're like, hey, wait a minute. Maybe he changed his MO because he's incapacitated. Like, maybe he didn't change his MO because he lost confidence or because he wanted to, but because he had to. Maybe he had an injury or he had a stroke. And they're like, it's time to go through the medical records. And then Gideon says, it's time to call our girl Friday. So I wrote down the plot of His Girl Friday. It's a Cary Grant. It's a Cary Grant movie. It was described on Wikipedia as a slapstick comedy drama romance.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, the plot of it is this reporter Williams, his ex-wife Hildy is about to get remarried, and he doesn't like that. So he spends the whole movie. Um, Bruce is the fiance. He spends the whole movie like doing shit to get Bruce like put in jail, and he's like convincing Hildy that like this news story that's happening is gonna be like the biggest news story she's ever written about, and like she has to stay here and write it. And every time Bruce gets out of jail, he shows back up and is like, "Can we please go to Albany and get married?" And then Williams plants fake money on him, plants drugs on him, like does this, does that to get him like in jail again. And then like Bruce like finally comes in and Hildy's like typing away her story, you know, and Bruce is like, I get it. Like, I'm never going to win this. And he leaves and he goes to Albany after all, except that Williams had transferred him some fake money. And so then he did use fake money and ended up in jail anyway. And then at the end of the movie, Hildy and Williams get back together. And Hildy's like, actually, I'm really glad this happened because I was really worried that you were going to let me go without a fight. And so they agree to get married. I know they agree to get married, and they're gonna go to the Niagara Falls for their honeymoon. But then right before they leave on the honeymoon, he's like, "Actually, I found this like really good story in Albany. I'm gonna go there instead to report on the story." And she's like, "He's never gonna change." And then they go to Albany instead.
Hey, did you realize that movies didn't have to be good for a long time? Does that ever hit you? Like, movies don't have to be good, or they didn't have to be good. Because the fact that they were making a movie was a marvel enough, right? But,
Like, holy
like,
shit, that's a talking picture. That's enough.
exactly. Not to, like, roast old movies or anything, but wow, what a
What's
film, huh?
what's that movie that's like? What's that meme that's like? Why does a movie have to be good? Is it not enough to just sit in a dark place and watch pity people on screen? That's what it was in classic Hollywood. Anyway, that the description of that made me feel like it was about JJ and not about, because he goes, let's call our girl Friday, and then JJ shows up sick as hell to do a press conference. You know,
She's actively dying, and yet she's like,
oh,
anyway, we
her
are
voice was
asking
so
for
sick.
your help to
Yeah, so
solve.
there's so many medical records. Also, this press conference comes to nothing. So they're asking for
Clearly.
information because there's like a lot of medical records. So they're like, do you know anyone involved in a car accident in the 80s?
But they
Like,
don't even mention that at the press conference. She's just
no.
like, she
Rasp
gets
for
halfway
info.
through the profile and then just gets harassed for the rest of the time and
Yeah.
never finishes the
I
profile.
wrote I wrote men keep interrupting her. Like at the first like talking to the media, and here it's like the same fucking dude just keeps interrupting her, and she like keeps making those like I'm choosing violence faces that JJ makes. Uh and then
Yeah.
and then Carla Bromwell's brother stands up and is like, my sister died because of some killer you should have caught 18 years ago. And JJ's like super like diplomatic about it and is like, I'm sorry for your loss. We're doing everything we can. Um, and then Max Ryan, it cuts to like JJ on TV, and Max Ryan is like, "Wow, like I could never have handled this. Like we didn't have to do press conferences like this when I was here." And I was like, "JJ can handle her own," which like yeah, she can. Um,
Queen.
in the
Girl boss
criminal
to support your fellow girl bosses.
in the Criminal Minds reboot, they like need to let people curse. I need JJ and Emily and Tara just to be like fuck, 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 fuck you, fuck this, fuck that, fuck them. Like,
God, have you considered the fact that that reboot's going to come out within the next like 3 years, probably? And we're going to have to watch it, you
you
know?
know, here's the thing. When I first watched Criminal Minds and I heard there was gonna be a reboot, I was like excited. I was like, oh, that's nice. Like it hasn't been off the air that long. Like they'll just like pick it back up. You know, a few things will be different. It'll be fun. I don't want a reboot anymore. We don't need it. You know, we started this recording talking about how good this episode was, and yet once again, we cannot talk about the episode.
We've de evolved.
We have. This is our de-evolution.
Okay, we should really go back to this episode though.
Max Ryan is like, they need someone to blame, and I'm easy because I didn't solve it. Like, I need to close this case so that they'll stop like talking about it. And he's like, I haven't seen my family in years. And then he says like, the BAU doesn't employ agents who can relax. And Elle has this like look on her face, and I wrote beginning of Dark Elle.
This episode really does feel like it's setting the stage for like the
Yeah,
shit.
And, we've mentioned the past couple of episodes, right? There's Elle being like, is it better for a family to stay together or to separate? And Gideon's like, it's always better to stay together. And then last episode, what was it? Oh, should, like, children always know who their parents are? And Gideon said yes, but, it didn't end on his side. And now it's like Elle being like, how does anyone have a family and do this work at the same time? Like, it really feels like Elle is like, I really wanted this job and I love it, but, you know,
Yeah, and I don't.
like, I wonder if it was like this early, Lola Gardini was like, I can't do this,
Well, because she was in. She leaves in what, mid season 2?
Not even mid, early.
Early season 2?
I think she's gone by North Mammon. I think she leaves by like episode 3 or 4, and then Emily shows up to Hutch's office in 9. So I think there's only like 2 or 3 episodes without a brunette.
Yeah, she's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. She's only like 6 episodes of season 2.
Okay, yeah.
Because
And
she
most
leaves
of them
really
are
shortly after the Fisher King.
Yeah, I was gonna say Fisher King is her big like goodbye.
So yeah, I wonder if they're starting to set up this struggle of being at the BAU is not easy.
No.
It takes a very special type of person to do this job for a long period of time.
Yeah. Is the first part of Fisher King the one where she like goes to Mexico with Derek? Or is that like the one
yes,
before?
Yes,
that is the first part.
They are in Mexico hitting on chicks during the first part of Fisher King.
Right. So we have 7 episodes left. So there's only 5 episodes between this and the first part of Fisher King. Mm-hmm. So like
No, there's more than 5 episodes between this and the first part of Fisher King. I'm sorry. Because Fisher King Part 1 is the season finale. And then Fisher King Part 2 is the season premiere of season 2.
Oh, okay. So
you have
6.
Technically 6 episodes. Yeah, sorry.
But
not to like split your dick on very small semantic things, but
split your dick. You couldn't say split hairs. It had to be split your dick.
I don't know why split your dick just came up in my brain, but it did, and I'm very sorry about that.
Split Your Dick is the title track of Erotic Love Map.
Good callback. Good callback.
It's the last fucking episode. Then we cut to the woman who was in the photos in the dark room, and she's like an elementary school teacher or something, kindergarten teacher.
Yeah, she's much older now.
Yeah, and we get the same, like, every time the Keystone Killer is in the room, we get this kind of like montage of camera flashes and like black and white and all that kind of stuff, and we get that here looking at this woman.
You can tell it's different from the psychotic frenzy killer things that they use because this is in black and white and not orange.
Yeah. I mean, you're not.
You laugh, but that's
wrong.
100% accurate.
You're not wrong. Man, every fucking episode, they're like, here's a frenzy. Look at it from a psychotic's point of view. Like, this is a VHS tape. Like, now it's pictures. They really were just like using those After Effects.
What I really also like, by the way, now that you mentioned the picture thing, is they do in fact do one of those picture-in-picture transitions that they love. But every time they do it, somebody is holding a photo in a way that no human person would ever actually hold a photo.
Fuck, it's so fucking funny.
When they do it on the plane, like when Ryan's holding the photo, he's like holding it. He's like holding it like this.
Right.
This is how he holds this photo.
He holds it up to the camera so the camera has plenty of space to zoom.
It's like, this is not how any human person would hold a photo. It just makes me laugh every time.
That's like in Derailed when Elle like lifts her folder like vertically just so that the guy can like see
read
the
it.
FBI logo. It's like,
yeah.
It's like, there's gotta be a better way to do this, guys. Anyway. Why couldn't she have like dropped it and it, like slid into the aisle? Like something. Anyway, not important. But what we see the woman. So Hotch thinks that the aunt's about a stroke, and Derek's like, he would have been 25 at the time. Like, that's too young to have a stroke. And then Reed does this very long ramble about what a stroke is, and Derek actually like listens, and I was like, oh yeah, good. Listen to the boy. But then when he's done, Derek is like, so he was probably too young, and Reed's like, Yeah, he was probably too young. And then he says something about like people who had strokes who play virtual reality games like recover faster. And then Derek is like, nerd.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is fair, but is also a neat medical fact in that they are using virtual
Yeah.
reality, and they have been for the last 10 years. It's a very interesting field of science. Anyway.
Yeah. I definitely think it is. So then Hotch is like, oh, here's someone. He's in his 30s. He broke his neck. And nope, he did move to the Florida Keys and he's a scuba instructor. It was just like, this episode, you know, I'm gonna say something. This episode has a lot of those good little like humanizing touches.
And I really, yeah, no, I really like it when they have those tiny little moments of like, hey, these are people. They
Yeah,
hunt down the worst of the worst, but they are also just like people
I
who
think
have coffee orders and favorite movies and stuff.
I think that kind of stuff. Like I do think Criminal Minds does a really good job of like turning its characters from characters into people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think that that's what makes it stand out from so many other shows. Like we all love Olivia Benson, but at the end of the day, she's like a cop archetype. You
Her
know,
personality trait is cop.
yeah, and she may have details that are specific to her, but like I watched 15 fucking seasons of SVU, and it's just like okay, protective woman, lady cop takes no shit, you know, as opposed to watching like Criminal Minds, where you see those little moments where they get to be just like people solving
Mm-hmm.
crimes, you know. And I really think that's what sucks people into Criminal Minds is that like humanizing. You want to be these people's friends. You want to know them, you know.
Yeah.
And that's why we keep talking about how like the best episodes are the ones about them and not so much about like some cool crime. Um, and this show has this episode has a few little like peeks into that window. Oh, Gideon and Max Ryan are talking, and Gideon brings up, or Max Ryan brings up the Boise child killer, and says like when they caught him, like by the time they caught him, the detective was like nearly suicidal, like he had just been driven like crazy by the case and being so obsessed with it. And Gideon's like, be careful not to be the Keystone Killer's next victim. Like you're so invested in this, like you could be this guy's next victim. And Max Ryan is like, I'm worried because like I wrote that book and I like almost wanted him to come back and I wanted him to do this and like now he's killing people. Um and Gideon is like, you know, our team is here to help you. Like if you'll just give up some of this control, like you know, set aside some of this burden, we will help you and we will get you through this. That's what the team is for. And then Gideon kind of walks away and Max Ryan gets to like contemplate that.
I I really like this moment of being like, Gideon's like, we can solve this case. This is easily solvable. We can do this. If you just get your fucking shit together and play on the team a little bit here. Which is so good because it is so reminiscent of what Hotchner had to say to him at the beginning. Like, hey, we're a fucking team for a reason. Get your head out of your ass and let's do this. I really like that now Gideon has kind of like internalized that lesson. And I'm not to be like, wow, Gideon had such good character growth, but also it's been 15 episodes of pretty solid character growth along the way. And I like that they give him this moment to be like, oh, yeah, I was kind of insufferable back then, probably. I need to do better now.
Yeah, I think that like one of the reason Gideon is so terrible in those early episodes is so that he could develop this camaraderie, you know, and it his
Mm-hmm.
character growth all leads up to him leaving Spencer that note, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like he gets to the point where even though he just fucking disappeared off the face of the planet, he took the time to leave the person who needed to hear from him the most a note, you know? So I feel like we had to start with Gideon so ugh, you know,
Mm-hmm.
he's never great. I'm not gonna
No.
defend Gideon and say he's ever like
No, God,
great.
no.
But
Jesus, no.
but I think that is part of why, and I'm not talking about Mandy particular, I'm talking about Gideon. I think that's part of why Gideon ended up leaving. You're right about the mirror. He sees what this job does to a person. And it's like when it's him surrounded by these kids, he can be like, oh, it's just because I'm older. It's because I've seen more. Like, I'm just a grumpy
Mm-hmm.
guy now. But when he sees himself and um, a mentor, even though that's not correct. This mentor character, he understands who he is to the rest of the team. You know,
Yeah.
like at the beginning of this episode, even Gideon is like, "Oh, don't worry, he knows what he's doing. He knows he's just consulting. He knows we're working together." And the team is like, "But does he though?" And I think
Hmm.
it's important that in this moment Gideon is like, "No, he doesn't." And if he does, he isn't showing it well. And Gideon has his own little wake up call. Now, I don't remember what happens next episode. This could all be walked back. But right
Hmm.
now, Gideon is having this kind of moment of, I don't want to be like this guy. I don't want to make my team feel the way he makes my team feel.
Yeah, and that's why I think more than anything, Ryan works as a mirror, as like a narrative foil to Gideon, because Gideon is the only one who really like takes that and I think internalizes it. Yes, this is sort of another small stepping stone on Elle's journey. But I think more than anybody else, I think Gideon takes the lesson that Ryan teaches him inadvertently, but I think he takes the lesson that Ryan teaches him to heart more than the rest of the team,
And I
you know?
think, yeah, and I think that, when Elle leaves, it does push Gideon in the direction of leaving,
Yeah.
because he's like, I should have seen her burning out and I didn't, you
Hmm.
know? And I think that's why he like opens up to Emily a little bit, but I think that's why at the beginning he's so like, I don't know this woman. I don't want to get close to this woman. Because think about it. He knew Elle for, what, all of a year and a half? Less,
About, yeah.
when she burned out and left, you know?
Hmm.
So then here's this new shiny eyed, bright eyed, eager young woman shows up. He's like, a year and a half, and you're gonna be gone too,
Yeah.
And like before Elle, we don't know, there was an open position. Elle took an open position, so like who knows who that person was that left, so I think Gideon became tired of seeing people come into the BAU, be burnt out, and him not being able to do anything about it, and kind of seeing Ryan showed him who he was.
There's no happy endings for the
Yeah.
BAU members. So it feels really like, I don't know, like narratively significant that we're seeing very early on in
Yes.
the show's running in season 1 episode 15 that the happy ending for this guy is catching one killer who got away.
Yeah.
Like, that seems very significant that they're putting very early on. They're like, there's no happy endings here. And
Yeah.
so it makes it even more, it makes it feel even better or worse, I guess, when later on the younger agents do go off to have happy endings. When Derek goes to have a happy ending, right?
Yeah.
When they do leave and have kids and have families and actually like make it work.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting to me. It's very um yeah, interesting, thought provoking, I think, that in season 1 we're presented with this: there are no happy endings for people in the BAU. You will
And then
burn
in
out.
season 2, it
Yeah.
solidifies that when Elle leaves, there's no happy endings for people in the BAU.
Yeah, and this episode really is the beginning of that. This episode feels like Criminal Minds like promised to examine what being around these horrors day in and day out does to a person.
It literally, yeah, it really does make you think of like, what's the cost of being a good guy in this way? What's the cost of
Yes.
saving the day? The
Yeah.
cost of saving the day is that sometimes you're gonna lose something of yourself.
Yeah. And we see, I think, for the first time in Max Ryan, how hard it is to fail, and we see it again throughout the show, how hard it is to fail, how hard it is to ask for help. Because if you build your whole identity around self sacrifice for the greater good, and then you have a moment of weakness, Like, are you not the hero you're trying to be? Like,
Mhm.
is that a moral failing? You know, like, if I'm not good enough to save myself, how can I possibly try and save other people? You know, for all of Criminal Minds like nonsense, I think that you know, the core question of what is the cost of doing good, I think is fascinating.
It is. And it's stupid that a propaganda show is the one show that I'm like, this best describes the moral cost, the human cost of being the good guy.
Yeah.
And it's like a dumb propaganda show about serial killers.
Yeah.
But like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I think, how do I want to say this? I'm not a cop apologist. I'm not a government apologist, but I think the fact that this is not a show about like beat cops is
Mhm.
what kind of lets it do that. You
This is a
know?
show about the people who catch serial killers.
Yeah.
Like the
Like
worst of the worst.
like SVU, I feel, asks a similar question. Like SVU to me asks, like, how do you live your life knowing that there is evil around every corner?
Mhm.
You know? But that question kind of puts cops as these guardian angels, you know,
Mhm. Which is
which is
ugh.
ugh. Um, you know, but I think because the BAU doesn't tackle, like, they're never like, how dare this poor person rob a 7-Eleven for bread, you know? Like
Mhm.
the crimes that they're fighting feel far enough removed that, like, obviously it's so pro like government, like the Patriot Act fucking bullshit. But I think that because the crimes are so um big,
Yeah.
because they're like hyperbolic, you know, like every
Mhm.
case feels like an allegory. You know, it
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily feel like I could walk down the street and see Olivia Benson beating the shit out of some like Mexican, you know? Like
Yeah.
I'm not worried I'm gonna like look in an alley and Emily Prentice is like beating up sex worker, you know? It's so far removed that
Yeah.
it's much more like academic, you know?
Mhm.
It's like therapists with guns, right?
Yeah.
It like
Sure.
it feels
Sure.
it like it feels far enough removed that you can that viewers can focus on the characters and on the mess the not propaganda message,
Mhm.
you know, as opposed to something like Brooklyn Nine-Nine, where
Yeah.
you're like, oh my god, that's so funny. Boyle's doing the single ladies dance with the sex workers he arrested. You know, it's like, ugh, like Criminal Minds doesn't have that constant cringe that some of that stuff gives you. So I think it's easier for
Yeah.
the message to get through.
Yeah.
But don't worry, we are watchdogging that shit. No
Yeah,
propaganda
trust
here.
us. We are we're not just laying down and accepting the propaganda, but it is fascinating the moral choices that they've given us and the
Yeah.
moral choices they set up this early on in the series.
Yes,
Like
exactly.
episode 15. Anyway, we should go back to the episode to finish this out.
Uh-huh. This is always the part of the recording when we've been recording for 11 hours. That my attention span does run out. But we're in the last
Yeah, we're in the last
home
little bit of
stretch.
it. Home stretch, let's go.
Okay. Okay. So then Hotch is like, well, maybe Theon Step is like a college professor because he would have been like 25 and have access to these girls. And then Reed suggests like, hey, why don't maybe like it was an accident. Like maybe he got in a car accident.
Because car accidents are like the most common type of accidents to happen.
Yeah. And um Gideon's like, well, car accidents would have been recorded by the police. So Derek's like, okay, I'll have Garcia look. And Garcia looks it up and she says, I guess friends let friends drive drunk back then. Which did make me laugh. And then there's a bit of American propaganda here. There was something like 30, there was like a bunch of, there were like 30 American made cars that were involved in crashes in 1985. Um, and
1988.
1988, thank you. There were
Mhm.
only 30 involved, and of those 30 American-made cars, only 5 of the drivers ended up in the hospital. So she says, "Let's hear it for American-made safety."
I
She's
love
uh,
big. I love
big
fucking
auto.
big auto. Yeah, and their propaganda.
She said that, and I was just like, okay. Um, and then it's like the first person she mentions, like it's him. So his name is Walter Kern. He's 48. He got in a car accident and broke his back.
Oof.
And yeah, and he was found outside of a house on Anderson Street, outside of Carla Bromwell's house. Bum bum bum. So if he's 48 now, he would have been in his late 20s before, just like Max Ryan predicted. He was in the ROTC in high school. He was in the Air Force for a bunch of years. After the car accident, he lost mobility in his right side. And his jobs were like installing home alarms in people's houses and stuff. So it's like that's why there was never any forced entry. He was invited into their house,
Yeah.
which is interesting. I'm so surprised they didn't mention BTK because
Yeah.
BTK literally was like an ADP salesman.
And didn't he also do very intricate knots too?
Yes.
Isn't that the B in BTK?
Hold on a second. Was BTK ever car?
I think so.
Oh, yes, 2005.
Yes, he was.
Oh, he was literally caught in 2005
Oh,
when
what the
this
fuck?
season takes place. But he killed in Kansas. I'm so sorry. Is the Keystone Killer supposed to be BTK?
I think that's on the IMDb trivia page, is that the base of this case seems similar to the BTK because of the intricate knot work.
Oh,
And the fact that he strangled, because BTK also strangled.
yeah, and he was into autoerotic asphyxiation, just like this guy turned to. Oh,
Yeah.
well, who knew? Oh, I mean, don't answer that. Clearly, people knew. Um,
And also BTK was also in the Air Force. He was only apprehended in February 25th of 2005. When did this episode air? Were they just like, "Hey, have y'all heard of this BTK killer?"
aired March 1st, 2006, right?
This was aired March 1st. Oh yeah, March 1st, 2006. So
So a
yeah, they
year
would have had the
later,
time to be like, "This is our BTK."
yeah. So yeah, a year later they made a BTK type killer, probably for the anniversary of his being caught.
Yeah, he was literally an ADT salesman in Wichita,
Yeah,
which is, fun fact, like an hour away from me. I could drive there if I wanted.
yeah. Um,
So yeah, this
yeah,
is
and
their
look,
BTK, I think.
see, look, in 2004, the investigation of the BTK killer was considered a cold case, but then Dennis Rader initiated a series of communications to the local media, which then resulted in his arrest. So in this case, it's a guy who they assume it's a cold case, who then started reaching out to police and media again, and that's how he got caught. This is 100%
This is the
BTK.
BTK. Wow. People are going to send us tweets as they're like 40 minutes into this episode and be like,
Yeah.
"I can't believe you guys haven't realized this is a BTK." And then like 40 minutes later, I'll receive another tweet that's like, "Never mind, you guys just mentioned that it's a
Yeah.
BTK." But this is definitely their BTK.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Also, Wikipedia calling him the BTK killer makes me laugh. It's like, ATM machine. BTK killer is literally bind, torture, kill killer.
Yeah.
Walter Kern also had a degree in criminology. That's why he knows about like law enforcement stuff. So they go to his house. And then they like knock on the door, and then it like cuts to a different house, and the door opens, and there's the blonde that Walter Kern has been stalking. And he gets inside, and it's like dun dun dun. Okay.
This the door transition they do is really well done,
Love
actually. I
it.
just want to say that I really enjoy it.
They definitely do this like later again.
Mhm.
You
But it's
know?
really good now.
Yeah, when they like open the door and it's just like, oh shit, he's not home. He's at the woman's house. Yeah.
Mhm.
So at his house, his wife lets him in. Um And then it cuts to the blonde. She's like crying. Uh, and he makes her put on the flexi cuffs herself. And then it goes back to his wife, and his wife is like, "Yeah, Walter's like at the community center with the Boy Scouts. He like volunteers to teach them their knots."
Yeah.
Yeah,
Which,
and yeah,
yeah.
and okay, I disliked how they went about this. She's like, "Can you leave? Like, this is weird." So they were like, "Does Walter have a room that you are not allowed to go into?" And she's like, "I mean, he has his dark room." And they're like, "Does he get um disproportionately angry when you go into that room?" And she's like, "Yeah." And they say, "Has he had fits of depression?" And then she goes, "Oh my god, what is this about?" And they were like, "And does he randomly snap out of it?" And she's like, "Oh my god, what's happening?" But I just hate that they were
What does
like,
this mean?
"Does he have a private room? Are you not allowed to go in there? Does he have depression?" I was like, "Alrighty." Depression is like not a mental illness that will make you kill people.
Yeah, it's like,
Who
you're just
depressed
sad.
people? We don't have the energy for that.
Yeah,
You think I
exactly.
have the energy to go fucking kill someone? If I take a
Did I
shower,
really
it's
have
a
the
good
energy
day.
to Yeah, exactly. I can't clean my dishes, but
Yeah,
sure. I could
but like,
definitely murder somebody. No, I also don't like how they're like how she's like, "Can you leave?" And then they're like, "Just one more question. And one more question. And one more question. And one more question."
yeah. I mean, it's the same thing of like, you know, in What Fresh Hell, when Hotch is like, "But if you have a lawyer, you won't be able to talk to us." They're like, "If we leave, you won't be able to show us his secret room." Like,
Yeah. It's like, "Okay, I get it. You're propaganda. I know. I know."
"Hey, sir, you don't have a wallet. You don't have a warrant. Get the fuck out of my house."
Exactly.
Yeah,
Hey guys, never talk to cops.
his dark room is like in the cellar.
Which would be a terrible place for a dark room because it is not climate or humidity controlled. That pisses me off so fucking much.
Yeah, yeah. I
You
thought it was
need a
gonna be
very
like an
controlled
office.
environment for a dark room. A cellar? No.
What if your basement floods?
What if your basement floods? What if it's just really humid outside? The cellar's not climate or humidity controlled.
No.
Your shit's gonna run so bad. That's so annoying.
His pictures are like pinned to like brick walls. I was like, what is this fucking like brick and concrete basement this man has decided to make his photo studio? That's why they're all blurry as fuck. They find a scrapbook. Oh, he's collected articles about himself and about Max Ryan. They find a scrapbook on all the women he's killed. He had like stalked them beforehand. And then I wrote, "Read montage."
Read montage again.
He's like going through the pages, he's like looking at words, and then he's like, "But wait, the last few chapters are blank." Here's a question for you. Scrapbooks, do they have chapters or pages?
Scrapbooks have pages.
You
They
wouldn't be like,
have what I would call sections, but I don't think they have pages.
"I don't have chapters." They're not like a
My
book book.
mom's, yeah, my mom's scrapbook of me as a child, I don't have like a chapter age 7. It's like Bailey's 7 now. Like it's not like it's not a chapter.
Yeah,
It's just like she's 7 now.
yeah,
Anyway, now
yeah.
she's 8 and
So
playing soccer. Like it's not like
yeah,
chapters.
yeah. Chapters of our lives.
I feel like you would
Um,
need like to designate it as a chapter, I would say there needs to be some sort of like page break or like title card, page
yeah.
card, or something like that.
And they also said like each like the pages are so detailed he can like relive his like killings, and then they like showed a page that was like two pictures on one side and then like a picture glued over a handwritten page on the other side, and I was like, I don't know if I'd call that detailed.
His
um
scrapbooking skills are so lacking.
I mean, for a serial killer who's making a scrapbook that he had to look at for 18 years, like, spruce it up, put some
Yeah,
glitter on
add
it.
some, add some stickers, some little like subheadings, maybe like an artistic little blood splatter or two. Like, come on, if you're gonna be a serial killer scrapbooker, like, be good about it, you know?
Bubble letters on the front. Anyway, Greed is like, "Oh, I get it now. Unfinished business." So he puts together that the reason the ages of the women have aged up with him is because they were already on his list 18 years ago. So like Carla Bromwell, like the reason he was outside of her house when he got in a car accident was because he was on his way to kill her back then. And so now he has like other people to kill. So they have to figure out like who it's gonna be. And then it cuts back to the blonde woman and him. And the woman is like, "What are you doing? I've known you for years." And BTK's being like super deliberate about it. He keeps like licking his lips, and it's super gross. Um, and he puts the bag over her head. The SWAT bursts in, and they can hear the woman screaming. Derek grabs him. Max Ryan like frees the woman, and then Derek is like, "Gideon, I need your cuffs." So Gideon like pulls his cuffs out, and then he's like, "Wait," and he turns and he like hands the cuffs to Max Ryan, and is like, "You do it." And I wrote in all caps, "Catharsis."
Yeah.
Okay, here's where I was like, "Oh shit, Criminal Minds, you ding dong did it." So when Max Ryan looks at him in the face, they do this like flashback to him somewhere else. And I was like, wait a minute. Wait a minute, wait a minute. So I went back to the beginning of the episode to Max Ryan's lecture, and
Mm-hmm.
Walter Kern is in the fucking crowd.
Mm-hmm.
He is in the crowd at the beginning of the episode. And then when Max Ryan gets that note on his car, Walter Kern is in that crowd too.
Mm-hmm.
Like Criminal Minds really said, "Oh, this one has rewatchability."
This one says we're gonna increase our rewatch value.
Yeah.
The folks who
Um
catch this one on syndication in 17 years are gonna be just losing their minds.
gosh, ABC keeps playing season 1 episode 15 and they can't stop seeing that man's face in crowds now. Um
Sorry, did you say ABC instead of CBS?
oh dang, this is a CBS show, ain't it?
This is a CBS show. To be fair, the only ABC show that I know is Once Upon a Time, and I think it is now very hysterical to think of that crossover event. Anyway, CBS.
A Once Upon a Time Criminal Mind cross. I'm so
Can you
sorry.
imagine?
I'm so sorry, but we need to go on this journey. What
Okay.
is okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Murders have been killed, or sorry, murders have been committed, and each one it resembles a fairy tale, but the like bloody version. So like two sisters are found dead in the house, and one has her toes cut off and one has her heels cut off. That's Cinderella for you. One of them is drowned to death, and like the inside of her thighs have all the skin removed, like Little Mermaid when her legs fucking ripped apart. Like someone's doing that shit. And
Jesus Christ.
yeah. Hi, these are children's fairy tales, so
These are children's stories.
yeah. Do you know the real story of Little Mermaid?
No, but it sounds horrifying, and honestly, right now, I don't want to learn.
Okay, it's really like Jesus Christ. Anyway, so like serial killings are being done like this based on the original horrific children's stories. And so Criminal Minds is like, okay, well, this is all happening like in this weird like Boston forest area. All these bodies are being found. So they go there and they end up in the town of Storybrooke. And it's like the Criminal Minds people like know something is up because everyone is being so cagey. But it's just that like the Storybrooke people are like, we do want you to find this horrible serial killer, but also we are secretly magic people. And so it's like the Criminal Minds trying to like stop the killer from killing again, and like but no one in Storybrooke will help them because they're all afraid their magic will be found out. But then like in the end, um they reveal their magical selves, and they do find the killer who's like, you know, fucking gold or whatever. And then the whole Criminal Minds cast does wake up on the plane, and they think it's like, oh, it's all a dream. But then the camera like goes outside of the plane, and it turns around to the front of it and zooms in on the pilot, and the pilot is one of the seven dwarves. That would be my Storybrooke Criminal Minds crossover.
I love it. I love the fact that the Criminal Minds gang would absolutely roast the shit out of Storybrooke's police department, which is just Emma and Prince Charming.
Stop, pause. The entire episode is Emily Prentiss and Emma Swan flirting so hard that JJ finally comes out of the closet and says,
oh my god, I would love that for her.
I'm the only blonde you're allowed to have a crush on. And then when she comes out, it's revealed that Emily Prentiss and Emma Swan were like, yeah, bruh. We did this on purpose.
They had dated in college or something. Okay, we have to go back to the episode right now. We are de-evolving so fast.
Devolution.
Open up your notebook, get back to your notes. Let's go. Let's finish this one out strong, please. We have had so many tangents today.
I know. We're like literally so close to being done. When Max Ryan is like cuffing the Keystone Killer and dragging him out, the Keystone Killers are like, we're inseparable. We're together forever. And Max Ryan's like, all right. Okay.
He's like, let's see about that. Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah. So then they go on the plane. And then, okay, here's the in continuity. So Max Ryan tells a story about Gideon when he first started working at the BAU, how he was searching like a bomber's car, and then Max Ryan and a couple of the other guys had planted the director of the FBI schedule in the car, and Gideon found it and like took off running and like interrupted a meeting with like the director of the FBI and the attorney general because he thought
I love that Gideon's character trait is just running places really fast without like telling anybody where he's going.
It is bolting and screaming.
And honestly,
yeah,
I kind of love that.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, but the reason this isn't in continuity is because later we learn that Gideon and Rossi started the BAU. So how are they?
Oh, so
So how is Max Ryan the guy who was at the
already
BAU before
there?
Him? Yeah.
Yeah, with quote unquote some other guys. Yeah.
Yeah. The only thing I can think of is it wasn't like the BAU. You know, like if Gideon and Rossi were in the FBI in a unit with Max Ryan and they left to make the BAU and then asked Max Ryan to join.
Yeah, or if that unit like at the time wasn't called the BAU, but then would later become the BAU.
Well, it was originally the BSU, the Behavioral Science Unit.
Yeah. Thank you, Spencer Reid.
I was just going to say, don't you remember season 1, episode 2, Compulsion?
Shut the fuck up. I love incontinuities. Anyway.
Yeah. But like when they started telling that story, I was like, what? What are you talking about?
They really don't care about even the most basic part of their own continuity.
No. I mean, okay. Elle is sitting. Oh, JJ is on the plane.
She's here.
She's back. Elle is talking to Hotch and is like, you know, he doesn't have a family. He hasn't talked to them in years. And Hotch says divorce is common in the BAU.
Ouch.
Which is so funny because nobody gets divorced on the show. I mean, I guess Hotch does.
Technically Hotch does.
Not technically. He does. Oh, this is when I cringed. I even wrote, Hotch says, divorce is common in the BAU. Rip. He does get divorced very soon.
He does.
Yeah. And I was like, don't you think it's weird that, like, it was Saturday night, everyone was available to just drop everything and come in? Like, isn't that weird? And Hotch is like, no.
But like it is weird.
But like it is weird. Like not just that they didn't have anything else going on, but that they were all willing to like drop it. Like I think Hotch was like, I didn't have any plans, and Derek was like, speak for yourself. You know, and it's something that we see a lot, that they just like, it really feels like if they are not at the BAU, they're sitting at home waiting to be at the BAU.
Yeah, they are on call all the time.
Yeah. And if they're not at home waiting to be at the BAU, they're hanging out with their coworkers from the BAU. Yeah. You know, it's like, yeah. But Elle is like, it's weird. Like, that's weird, Hotch, that this is all consuming like that. And then she asks, like, how do you have a job and a family? And Hotch says, basically it's about setting your priorities and keeping them. When I'm with my family, I'm 100% with them. When I'm at work, I'm 100% at work. But we know that this isn't true, you know?
We know that he has a problem with being 100% present when he's with his family
Yeah.
and like keeping his promises to his wife and newborn son.
I mean, episode 1, he's building a crib with his pregnant wife and he gets a fax and he just leaves, you know?
Yeah.
And like his in Broken Mirror, his wife, yeah, Haley is like, don't worry about it. Like, stay at work,
They
stay at
need you
work.
more than I do. Yeah.
Yeah, but like his wife is like in labor,
Yeah.
you know? So
Not
like
to be
he's
like, I'm just built different, but if my wife was in labor and I was at a job and she was like, no, stay there, I'm going to be like, no,
what
you're in labor.
that is our child. You are my wife.
Yeah, exactly.
You
Not to be
know?
like, I'm built different than straight men, but I'm built different than straight men.
And I was worried about like losing her life. She's like, I'm worried that my entire life is gonna pass me by. Or I'm gonna have a chance and I'm not gonna take it, or I'm gonna have it and I'm gonna lose it. Like she gets very upset. And Hotch is like, you just have to find a way not to let it eat you up. And that's kind of how the episode ends, with all of them like in the plane.
And there's
know?
like laughter on one end of the plane, and then Hotch
It's
and Elle are
silence.
just kind of sitting
Yeah.
in silence on the other, which I think is interesting to like have that dichotomy exist on the plane itself.
Yeah, and it happens a couple of times. We see people having private conversations, but it's interesting to me that Hotch like got onto the plane and said no, thank you, and sat literally as far as possible,
As
as
far
he
as he could
as far as he
from
could from Max Ryan and Gideon. Like he said no, thank you.
these
You
old men
know?
have been a pain in my ass all day. I am getting some peace and fucking quiet over here.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's interesting. I really love now that we're doing this, and I have an excuse to do these kind of like deep readings of the show. I think it's just really interesting that Hotch sat all the way at the other end and he's doing work. He's like going through case files,
Mm-hmm.
and then
Yep.
Elle is like reading a newspaper, talking to him. JJ is kind of like right in the middle. She's reading the newspaper. She's like listening to the story, but also reading the newspaper. And then Derek and Reed are like glued to Gideon and to
Mm-hmm.
um, Max Ryan. They're just like glued, like listening to all of these stories of like, you know, profiles of the past, and I feel like Derek probably feels like he is part of that like bro FBI, club.
Yeah.
Whereas Reed is like, I want to be like that, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of interesting things to say about how they act on the plane before and after cases and everything. It's
Yeah.
really it's neat.
Yeah.
I
have one more
know
thing.
I know we're digging way too much into something that is probably just like a decision somebody made when they were blocking these scenes out.
Yeah.
But I still think it is worth it to dig into these things like they're intentional because it's way fun.
Yeah.
And so interesting. Sorry,
Yeah.
you were saying?
I have one more thing. So there was a deleted scene in this episode.
Ooh. Does it have a good name like a erotic love map?
God, I wish. No, it was called like Ryan annoys the team.
That's the subtitle for this whole goddamn episode. Are you kidding me?
I know. So basically, it's after Elle is like, I'm gonna go dust the window for Prince. That after that part, it cuts to her downstairs, and Derek is there, and he's like, hey, is he getting on your nerves? And Elle is like, how like when you're part of a team, you just kind of work well together. And Derek is like, you finish each other's sentences, and she's like, exactly. And then you get somebody new, and it just throws off your rhythm. And then Elle says, you realize he's been working this case since I was in middle school. And Derek goes, damn. Yeah, like that really puts it into perspective. And I hate that they cut it. I get why they cut it. It wasn't like important. It was like a character beat instead of like a, case beat. But it just really made me be like, that's why Elle's having this like crisis, Because like imagine like being, because Elle, if she stays at the VAU, is one day going to turn around and there's going to be a young, bright-eyed, woman ready to get on there, and she's going to say things like, wow, you've been working on that case since I was in middle school. And Elle's going to have that moment of like, well, shit, where did my life go?
Yeah.
I just thought it was interesting that she like had done the math on that and that it was like sticking with her,
But also, can you imagine if you met somebody who was working on one singular case for the last 18 fucking years?
Yeah. There are people listening to this podcast right now who are younger than
Criminal Minds, the show.
Like Criminal Minds show. No, but like were born after this man was hunting, began hunting this guy.
Yeah. It's just fucking insane.
Yeah.
I think it's just insane. This episode was like really way better than I thought it would be, honestly. I liked what they set up here.
Yeah, this is, I think, the first episode where it was about a case, but like, no, it wasn't, It's the first episode where it wasn't like, look how smart we are tricking you, and it was more just kind of like about the world. Like, it felt like a genuine episode of world building. I mean, think about how much we talked about the message of the show, about Elle, about Gideon, about the mirror, There was a lot in this episode.
There was a lot, and we have been recording for 2 hours and 45 minutes. So we've been talking for a while. James, after all this, assign a number value to this episode. 1 to 10.
I'm gonna give this episode like an 8.
I was also gonna give it exactly an 8, James.
It's a season 1 8, but it's an 8. Which again, to remind folks, number 1, we will be putting all of the season 1 episodes against each other to find the best of the season. And also in the future, we're going to compare the best of the best to the worst of all the seasons. So remember when we say this is a season 1 8, it's probably like a season 4 6, maybe, I cannot wait until we compare the 10 that is Demonology to the 1 that is Ride the Lightning.
But remember, I liked Ride the Lightning, kind of.
Sure.
I gave it a 4.
Yeah, okay.
The next episode of Criminal Minds, 116, is The Tribe. And I don't know if you remember that one, but it is bad.
Oofa doofa.
Yeah.
No,
So you and I are gonna have to talk a little bit about how we're gonna talk about all that.
We're gonna talk about interrace casting. We're gonna talk about the legacy of trauma. We're gonna talk about fuck the government. Ooh, girl.
We're gonna get to talk colonialism. We're gonna get to talk. Oh my god, we're gonna get to talk.
We're gonna be like, what was woke in 2005?
The answer is not anything in that episode. So
no.
I know I sound very not excited to talk about it, but I am excited to talk about it. I just know that you and I are both gonna have to do our research beforehand. That's it for this episode of Wheels Up, y'all. As always, follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Wheels Up Pod. Also, if you would be so kind as to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, it really does help us out a whole lot. I appreciate all of them, and I read them all, and I hold them very close to my heart. James, give me an ending quote.
Okay, let me look through my notes here.
Ooh, the ASMR is very nice.
As Garcia says, lists are my specialty.
I love that one, because, like, me too, Queen.
Queen, me too.
List. Me too. I love a good list.
Let me take a note on my page 7 of my list of this episode. Lists are my specialty.